this is why I am no longer, never have been, the silent leader of this crime mob cult thing that allegedly is going on between creators. This was the magic money tree that when it was alive and in the ground, planted without any roots, it was producing money so that I could pay all of these creators off. But very dead, no money here, guys. Sleuth dog, what are you talking about? You mangy mutt, what are you talking about, sleuth dog? Good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle. I hope you're doing well. Welcome to another video. It's Saturday morning. Not really many signs of this heat wave that's going to cause like death and destruction and whatever. We've got an extreme weather warning. We're only like forecast like 33C here. We've got a red extreme weather warning. I'm not surprised some of you guys laugh at us Brits for not being able to handle weather. So let's get serious finally. This is the continuation of my mini series into my top 5 suspects in the Summer Wells case. So we're now up to number 2, and that is Don Sherfey Jr. Don Sherfey Jr. by a country mile would be my number 1 suspect in the abduction theory, and I'm going to explain why in this video. I talked about him at length, like January, February time. I did several videos, like to the point that people were just getting bored with it. As I was finding more and more out, I was making more and more videos. But I kind of let it go, talked about other things. Jodie Sue came up. And honestly, however incriminating Jodie Sue sounds and implicates her family, I don't think the evidence is half as compelling of, Jodie Sue being nothing more than just a gobshite, as we say in the UK. I don't know whether that translates at all to my overseas followers. Could she be involved? Yeah. As I talked about yesterday, she's made it to the top 5. But by a country mile, the information, the evidence, circumstantial of course, against Don Sherfey Jr. is way, way more compelling, in my opinion, than Jodie Sue, than Don, than Grandma. Now, I talked about Don Sherfey Jr. only a few days ago, so I'll link that video in the cards, and I'll just kind of skip over some of the stuff that I talked about in that, but I don't want people not to be able to watch this as a standalone video within this mini-series. So there will be some repetition, so don't come at me in the comments saying, Michelle, you said this the other day, you're struggling for content. No, I'm not struggling for content. I've got so much content. I've got content coming out of my ears. I don't have the time to cover all of the content I want to cover. But because I want this mini-series to stand alone, if that's how people choose to view it, then for the sake of completeness, I have got to cover some of the things that I talked about only the other day. He was 28 when he was arrested. He was arrested in May 2021, just a month before Summer disappeared. He was arrested and he was charged with not only possession but uploading as well as downloading materials and using social media like Snapchat to do so. Very, very alarming, because this constitutes over 1,000 images. Over 1,000 images of child P. Even so, just a day later after his arrest, he was released on bond, and he's been on bond ever since. His case went through court again on the 1st of July this year, and another continuance until mid-August. Why this case keeps getting continued, I don't know. But anyway, it does. The important thing for this story is that only a month before Summer disappeared, This is what Don Sherfey Jr was doing. So who is Don Sherfey Jr? Well, he's the son of Don Sherfey Sr. Don Sherfey Sr is the long-term boyfriend stroke partner of someone called Christy, and Christy is the daughter of someone called Mary Gold Sexton. Mary has recently passed away, so rest in peace, Mary. Mary was the sister of William Gold. William Gold was Don Wells' stepfather. So there's kind of the family connection between Mary and Don. I don't think there was any love lost between them. I don't think they were friends. But Don Sherfey Sr, in discussion with Prayer Garden of America, said he'd been on the Wells property numerous times. His family knew Summer. In fact, he said his girlfriend Christy, when the Wells used to go to one of the Baptist churches before they moved over to the SDA church, Summer would actually go and sit with her. Summer liked her, and we'd go and sit with her, lie with her head in her lap, you know, just... Summer was a really loving child, yeah. You see this with the way she behaved with Robin. Well, you could kind of imagine, based on what Don Sherfey Sr said, that maybe she was like that with other people as well. And perhaps Christy was somebody who showed her kindness and patience, and Summer just liked people, I guess. So there's no question at all that Mary Gold, Christy, Don Sherfey Sr did not know the Wells and did not know Summer. That is absolutely out of the question. Don Sherfey Sr also told Prayer Garden of America he had to stop numerous times, like, you know, on Ben Hill Road, Simpson Road. He had to stop in the road because the Wells kids, including Summer, would be out there, you know, running wild. So we know Summer did venture down the hill onto Ben Hill Road, Simpson Road, just round the corner. There's too many reports of that not to believe it, quite frankly. I don't care what Donald and Candice have said about her never going down the hill, never ever leaving the swing. It's not true. Don himself slipped when he said being an outside person was her downfall. Presumably, they're using this narrative that she never left the hill because they don't want it to appear that Candice was negligent. We'll talk about all of that tomorrow when we do Candice in this little mini-series. But for the purposes of today, I am completely convinced that Summer did not just stay on her hill. She walked down to Ben Hill Road with her brothers. That place is not Fort Knox. Yes, there's a steep side of the hill which kind of fronts onto Beach Creek Road. That's the area where there's the barrier. That's steep. But absolutely possible that Summer, the little fit, she climbed waterfalls in bare feet, guys, right? She was a fit, strong, healthy little girl. Regardless of what people were saying about her being half dead, she was strong, fit and healthy. She'd run down that driveway following her brothers. She'd run down the shallow side of the hill. There was a shallow side. Down onto the bottom property. You could just walk down, right, down the cutting that the tree service keeps permanently clear. And when Donald stood at the creek on the bottom property, you can just drive into the bottom property and look up at the house. It's just a few yards. And look, the other cutting that the tree service keeps clear between Beach Creek Road and Simpson Road, when Donald says that house up there, whose house is that? Whose house can you see from the Wells bottom property? Whose house can you see? Any clues? Oh, Mary Gold's house. Mary Gold's property is right there. Right there. It's 2 minutes away. 2 minutes away. So, we have Don Sherfey Jr, who doesn't live on Simpson Road. His dad doesn't live on Simpson Road. His girlfriend does, but he visits a lot. He says, oh, my son Don Sherfey Jr doesn't visit very often. Not been there for ages. Well, how do you know Don Sherfey Sr? Because you're a truck driver, you're out of state. In fact, your own alibi for June 15th, 2021 was that you were out of state trucking. So what, do you have a tag? Do you have a tracker on your son, on your 28-year-old son? You know, do you treat him like a child, like Jodie Sue treats her adult son? You know, what is it with these people? You know, treating their adult children as babies. You don't know what Don Sherfey Jr was up to. You're not expected to, because he's a grown man. You're not expected to know what he was up to. You didn't know what he was up to when he was uploading and downloading 1,000 images of child P that you call a mistake. Yeah, some mistake. A mistake would be accidentally, I don't know, clicking on a dodgy link and seeing one inappropriate image and thinking, oh my God, and clicking straight off. Not uploading and downloading over 1,000 of them. That's not a mistake. Right, let's be really clear here that Don Sherfey Sr was making excuses for his son, saying that he got him treatment. Well, too late. Horse has already bolted. In June 2021, when, you know, he'd been recently bonded out, scared, thinking he's going to go to jail soon. The fact that he's still out on bond, 14 months later, whatever. But back then, he'd have been thinking, I'm going to jail soon. I'm done for. I might as well fulfil my heart's most dark and depraved desires. I've one last hurrah. We know that so many child P's, people into child P, especially those into it to such an extent where they are uploading their own images. Where are these images coming from, guys? Right, if this is not, if he's not involved in a ring of sorts, where is he getting them from? Right, he's procuring them from girls' social media. He's probably having disgusting conversations with girls, like persuading them, forcing them, cajoling them to send him nudes. Oh, come on, guys. These people are sick. This is not just some harmless fetish. This is sickness, right? And so many of people into child P control their urges for a while and think that they're not doing any damage whatsoever by just, you know, getting their satisfaction from images from the internet. Nonsense. Every one of those images contains a child victim. But so many of them, go and look up the research yourself, so many of them go on to commit contact offences, and there has to be the first time for everything. Now, we don't know, right, whether Don Sherfey Jr hadn't committed contact offences before. Maybe he had. He's just not been caught for those. He'd managed to get a collection of over 1,000 images before he got caught for his child P. So, you know, he might be quite a manipulative, secretive criminal who has committed contact offences before. We don't know. We don't know his whereabouts on the 15th of June. We don't know if he was hanging around Simpson Road, or was he at his dad's place a few miles away at Reservoir Road? Was he at his other family's place at quite a few miles away at Blounteville, near Tri-Cities Airport? We don't know. Does he have an ankle tag? We don't know. Does he have an alibi? We don't know. But I'm telling you that above all the RSOs, and there are quite a few in that area, he's my number one if we're thinking about an abduction scenario, because he's got the proclivity, he's into child P, he's into children, he's got the potential to be on a property that is one of the closest, and not just the closest, but have the best view of the Wells property. So we'll be able to sit on Mary Gold's property, unbeknownst maybe to Mary, and watch. How do we know that he'd not been there watching and knew the places where Summer went to play, knew that on a nice summer's afternoon she'd be out there with her brothers? It takes seconds to snatch a child away under those circumstances. Now, when I first became aware of Don Sherfey Jr.'s existence, this was back in January, when Don Sherfey Sr. made himself known to the heels on the ground people, and then people started looking into him, and very quickly found out that his son was this offender, not yet convicted, but his dad's admitted he's made a mistake. He made a mistake. Made a mistake. Come on, made a mistake. That's all. But if you're prepared to make excuses for him, aren't you equally prepared to make excuses for him if you at all suspected that he could have been in the area? And that's why you said, not been to Mary's property for a long time. No, wasn't there. He also admitted that he'd not been interviewed by the cops because he doesn't live there. Right? And he's not an RSO, so just been missed. Because TBI, interviewed RSOs, got their whereabouts. Interviewed neighbours, got their whereabouts, checked out alibis. People like Don Sherfey Jr., and I'm sure he's not the only one, I'm sure there are many more, didn't check. Hopefully, they have now. And if he's got an alibi that the TBI have confirmed, well, that's all well and good. Good for him. But at the moment, we have no knowledge of what the TBI knows in that regard. We know the types of people they've interviewed, because they've told us. They know the types of data they've looked at, because they've told us. But how much was Don Sherfey Jr. able to hide? Maybe he'd be sensible enough not to take his mobile phone with him. Perhaps he had his mobile phone confiscated when, like the month before he was arrested for child P. I don't know. Maybe there was an order for him to stay off the internet. Maybe he decided to move over to contact offences because his desires needed to be satiated some ways. There's a couple more pieces of information that compel me towards Don Sherfey Jr. One is the camp that Cam found, Cam from Cracking Cases, that wasn't on Mary Go's property. It's on like the property, like a slither of property just to the east of Mary Go's. And there's a camp there. Cam showed some pictures on Cracking Cases channel. He's talked about it a few times. Very compelling that somebody was using that place high up on a ridge. I think it's higher. That ridge is higher or as high as the Wells Hill. So even though you wouldn't be able to see down in the Wells yard, I don't think, I mean, maybe you would with binoculars, but I'm not sure you would be able to when there's like full tree coverage. But you'd certainly be able to look down on the roadway there, without a doubt. And it'd be somewhere that you could just hide away. No one would know you were there. You know, when Cam spoke to this property owner and said, look, there's this camp up here, property owner had no idea. Said there shouldn't be anyone up there. But yeah, there had been. There was chairs up there, there was no tyre up there. I don't know whether that had been used as some kind of like fire pit or something, I don't know. There was like a whole, like a hunting blind, like to shelter the view of this camp from anybody looking up, anybody coming up the ridge. You kind of wouldn't know it was there. That's a concern. And with it being so close to Mary Goad's property, you kind of think, is that where Sherfey Jr would be hiding out? So he'd know of Summer, he'd know the lie of the land, because his dad's girlfriend, who Dad's been, you know, a partner with for years, Sherfey Jr had probably been like hiking around those woods, who knows, right? So maybe he thought he was being clever by setting up camp on an adjacent unused property, unused piece of land, rather than on Mary's property, where it's much likely to get discovered. You know, what's this camp doing here? You know, kind of thing. High up on a ridge, not accessible to anybody who really did not want to get there. But very quick to get down back onto the road. Very quick, if you needed to. So there's that. But even more compelling than that is the footprints. And I know some of you are going to groan and say, oh, Michelle, going on about the footprints again. Oh, the footprints. Look, guys, the footprints really are a thing. They really were found on the 19th of June. We see a neighbour post about them on social media, took his post down when he got abused, but fortunately some of them were screenshotted. They've been known since the first week. Most people, including me, ignored them, completely ignored them, because we became hyper-focused on the parents. We got tunnel vision and ignored these really important points. A neighbour on Beach Creek Road took a video, a live search in the middle of the night. So Saturday the 19th into Sunday the 20th of June, they searched into the night. They truly believed that they were going to find Summer Wells, because they'd found a set of footprints, right? A dog hit on this set of footprints, barefoot, child-sized footprints. We know Summer was barefooted. She ran around barefooted, but no trail. So I think the neighbour was correct when he surmised that, probably the sheriff's deputies also surmised at the time when these were found, the searchers surmised when these were found, that Summer had been carried and then set down, maybe to adjust her position or whatever. And it's those footprints. And people still say, even though I've made many videos about the footprints now, people still say, why were there no adult footprints? There were loads of adult footprints, because this was 4 days into the search. Searchers had already been through this guy's land once. There was too many adult footprints there to ascertain whether one of those adult tracks were the abductor. And then another set of footprints were discovered. I put a map together on Google Earth, and I've shown this quite a few times, shown it on a live stream or two. I've shown a screenshot of this a few times. There was footprints found on 2 properties. The other property, so not the guy who spoke out, whose address is on Beach Creek Road, but the other neighbour did not wish to be named. Now, I knew when I saw Cam's map, Cracking Casey's map, of the rough areas where the footprints were, I knew whose property these footprints were on. But when I did my map, I moved the marker out away from this person's property, just a smidgen, and just kept saying, this is general area, general area, general area. Didn't name them, even though I was itching to, absolutely itching to. Didn't name them, and then Cam did. So guess what? The second set of footprints were found on Mary Gould's property. Don Sherfey Jr has access to this property. He's not trespassing. If he was found on this property, it wouldn't be unusual. Mary would have just said, oh, hi Don. Come on, guys. There were other scent alerts found. There was one over towards Fred Hill's property. I don't think it was on Fred Hill's property, but over near Fred Hill's property. There was a scent alert, and the neighbour there said a dog actually led down. Like, it was such a strong... Like, some dogs, some search dogs, they bark on an alert. Some sit, some lie. Right, the handlers generally go with what the dog wants to do, and they learn the dog's response. So this dog led down, like, intently with its nose to the ground. And this property owner said, does that mean that's an alert? Yep. So we don't know the direction, you see, of travel, do we? So could it be that Summer had gone down Ben Hill, playing in the creeks with her brothers, and that's the scent alert? And then maybe her brothers left her, brothers went in. I don't know, just surmising. And then Don Sherfey Jr, or another abductor if you prefer, but this is an episode about Don Sherfey Jr, and of course this is all my opinion, all alleged, just a theory. He spots her, carries her out through the woods, knows how to avoid the trail cams, out onto Beach Creek. Where he goes from there, maybe he had his vehicle hiding, like parked away from the properties. And a little bit more circumstantial evidence, Sherfey Jr had a red truck. Not a Toyota Tacoma, it's a Chevy, but looks very similar. Very similar style to a 98 to 2000 Toyota Tacoma. I've never known whether the red truck was nothing but a red herring, frankly. But, you know, a UPS driver saw a Toyota Tacoma. I didn't normally see either the 14th or the 15th, you know, the evening. I don't know. Look, guys, I believe in coincidences, I do. And this could be a whole set of complete coincidences. But other people say there's no such thing as coincidences in true crime. And I beg to differ. Sometimes there are. Sometimes you can look at stuff through a lens, like we do with Geordie Sue. You look through a lens of Geordie Sue as a suspect, or of Don Wells as a suspect. And then you see everything that they say, everything that sounds a bit off, it incriminates them. When actually, it's just a bit off. And there's nothing to it. Like, I'll see her in the resurrection. You know, that's Don trying to be the God-fearing Christian. Making a inappropriate reference as his, you know, daughter's newly missing. But it's I think it's an example of his pessimism. And, I don't know, despondence. Geordie Sue stuff that we talked about yesterday. I mean, come on, guys. You know, that looks really incriminating, but it could be nothing more than us reading into just her being vindictive and nasty as being incriminating. Don Sherfey Jr could be a whole series of coincidences. He just so happened to get arrested for child P a month before. He's got access to a property so close to the wells with such good visuals onto the wells property. Just a coincidence. One of the sets of footprints found on Mary Gord's property, just a coincidence. The camp, just a coincidence. Someone in a quiet moment, that's all. Nothing to do with someone else. All of these things could be coincidences. But what if they're not? You know, people have said these footprints aren't real. People have said, how do we know that Summer didn't make those footprints on a different day? It's possible. Look, the footprints were found 4 days after she disappeared. Now, the bottom of your feet, sweaty, aren't they? Strong scent. Especially because they took the scent from one of Summer's shoes. Took the scent swab from one of Summer's shoes. So, shoe smell, foot smell, same. So, because the footprint's embedded into the ground, right, step embedded in, that scent is going to stay in the ground for a few days, quite a few days. Is it possible those footprints were made on the 14th? Yes. But why was Summer there on the 14th? And why was there no trail of prints? It's odd. Was there a contaminated shoe and it's someone else's prints? It's possible, but how likely is it? Isn't it just more likely that they were Summer's? And because there's no trail, there's a scent alert and then a footprint set and then another footprint set and there's no trail between them? Isn't that Summer being carried? And then people say, well, why have the footprints never been spoken about by law enforcement? Because they're evidence. Because they're evidence. The only reason why we know about the 2 sets of footprints and the scent alert is because neighbours have spoke about them. There may be more footprints that they found or scent alerts that they found that we don't know about. They may have a really good idea of Summer's path, of Summer's where she travelled or where she was taken. And maybe that's why they're so insistent that Summer's close to home and she's still out there somewhere. I find that so compelling. I find it more compelling than talking about Geordie Sue as a suspect or Don as a suspect or Grandma as a suspect. We've yet to get to Candice. We'll do her tomorrow. But if there's an abduction scenario, my number one by far is Don Sherfey Jr. In my opinion, just a theory. What do you think? Let me know. Let me know in the comments below. Tomorrow we're going to do number 1 and that will be Candice. So until then, goodbye from Miss Tillington and Miss Cassie Springer. Tomorrow's meant to be the first day of the heat wave, so I'll be out mega early to get the dogs out before it gets too hot for them. And then Monday, Tuesday, I'm probably going to be out like 5 a.m. so that they get a walk before the heat. Yeah, anyway, oh, she's off. Alright guys, see you later. She's not barking. Why is she not barking? That's the first time ever. She's just trying to make me look stupid, aren't you? Trying to make me look stupid. And so she always barks at dogs. Because the camera's on her, she didn't. Even though she got barked at.